Welcome to the BS Banking Show, Saurabh. Good to have you here.
Thank you very much, Raghu.
What in your view will be the fallout of the current funding winter on fintechs?
Well, I think the current funding winter in fintechs is, in some sense, a good thing. I know there's a short-term pain, but I think it is forcing the industry, the entire fintech industry, to think hard about business models and paths to profitability. And I say path to profitability because I think the investors are starting to look for clear path to profitability, not necessarily that you have to make money immediately, but those business models which were sustained by extremely low interest rates and hence very cheap money, they cannot sustain. And I think in some sense, it's a good thing.
Now, for some time, it has been suggested that fintechs are playing off regulatory arbitrage. With that window getting closed, how serious will be a look on business models themselves? And if it requires going back to the drawing board, will many fall by the wayside?
Some have already fallen by the wayside, and some have changed their business models. But then this is not as big a deal in the fintech world. That is part of life, where this is the part of the banking sector which believes in fail fast, right? Yeah, some things will fail, some things will not work out, some unexpected changes will happen, and the fintech business models are agile to be able to deal with pivoting their business models, right? That's the whole idea behind the growth tech, this type of entrepreneurial ventures. So it sounds pretty dramatic, but it is a part of life in this space. So some of them have had to adjust, and I would not say that they were playing on regulatory arbitrage. I think they were just spotting an opportunity and trying to create a business model around it. Some of those opportunities have been sort of modified by regulatory action, and new fintechs will emerge, new issues they will go after. I am very hopeful that the level of entrepreneurial energy in the sector is only going to go up in the next few years.
In which fintech areas do you see this change happening in a big way? Will it be payments, lending?
No, I think the biggest area where the Reserve Bank in India has come out a little bit strongly in terms of new regulatory provisions is on the lending side, especially on areas where fintechs were a lot of fintechs were involved in lending activities which were not kosher, or there was a relationship between non-regulated entities and regulated entities, and that relationship had to be clarified. The customer needed to know exactly what is going on for the sake of clarity. So some of these things are basic housekeeping which have been done. But lending in India has huge appetite for credit, and I don't see that coming down at all. For last 10 years, it has been like that. On consumer and business banking side, there is still a huge untapped potential, which I think banks are wanting to go after, but banks have only so much of capacity. So we will continue to see tremendous growth on the lending side with new different business models. Payments as well is nowhere finished in terms of its, but we will also see things like embedded finance coming up. We also expect new business models around B2B, for SME business models. There is another sector that we are very excited about, which is fintechs, which do not compete with banks, but actually will support the banks become better. That's what we call financial infratechs. And that sector also, we believe, is going to be a very strong sector. One last sector I'm very excited about is software as a service solution providers. And I believe that many of the Indian fintechs are not only going to serve the Indian banks, but banks globally. So there is so much excitement ahead of us.
Do fintechs still have a hold over legacy institution when it comes to response times or approach to business? As in, has not the gap narrowed?
Not at all. The gap has not narrowed, and it is unlikely to get narrowed anytime soon, because the gap, it is very difficult to just throw money to fill that gap. That gap is organizational. That gap is not about technology, but technology also plays a big role. Obviously, most of the fintechs have completely fresh technology stack, which is digital native, so it is quite versatile. But more important than that, fintechs are able to create an environment which attracts very high quality talent, right? Because value creation opportunities there, and also work environment which attracts the good talent to work together in small teams and with a lot of ownership. I think many banks are trying, but it is a very big and very difficult job to create that type of work environment in a legacy setup. And I mean, obviously, banks are experimenting with many different models. Some are trying to do things internally, some are trying to keep it in arm's length, and some are trying to buy out fintechs. But it is not an easy problem. It is so we are not going to see the gap bridged anytime soon.
With Mint Road placing a premium on corporate governance across regulated entities, what do you think will be the impact of this on their partnership with legacy players?
Yes, I mean, this is a very good question. There are two important points you've raised. One is the governance issue, compliance issue, and the other is partnership. And I'd like to cover both of them separately. See, I think this downturn or the winter, so to speak, is forcing most serious fintechs to understand and appreciate that compliance with regulations is not a necessary evil. It is a part of the game when you're trying to play in financial services. Financial services is a sensitive industry which requires a lot of regulation, and regulation has to be part of the design from day one, not an afterthought. So, and there is a recognition and belief that some of the governance standards have not been so robust, both from a compliance standpoint, but also just corporate governance. And that correction is taking place. It is going to, take away some non-serious players in the market. It will obviously increase the cost a little bit and hence favor the slightly larger ones. But I don't think that's a problem because I think there is enough money still to support robust business model, even though the break-even gets longer by a year because technical cost revenue. So that's one. I believe that we are going to see compliance embedded in the product design from day one, that we call compliance by design, rather than it being plugged as a separate thing in the end as an afterthought or as a necessary evil. That's a very big thing, and that will make a very big difference to the innovation that fintechs do. But the importance of partnership is a very big deal, right? And now I think we need to address that issue a little bit differently. It is very important that a large part of the fintech world will work in partnership with banks, not compete with the banks, because banks are here to stay and there's a lot of value to be added. Across the whole world, we find that roughly half of the fintechs are of that nature where they partner with the banks to improve their performance. In India, they are not half, they are only 20%. So in India, most of the fintech has been just competing with the banks. Obviously, the opportunity has been like that. If we have to get the banks to work with fintechs in a much more seamless partnership, some things need to change. Today, the environment is such that obviously Reserve Bank, for good reasons, holds the bank accountable to do a high level of due diligence on every fintech that they partner with. And that takes a huge amount of time. It delays things. It leads to a lot of frustration. Partnership is not so easy. So we have to work on that. I mean, that is an agenda. How are we going to see more partnership to take place? Of course, corporate governance and compliance standards will improve. That itself makes it easier. But we believe that there may be a need for certifying agency or audit agencies blessed by the regulator who can give certificates for cybersecurity and other elements of security and technology architecture is kosher and so on and so forth, so that banks don't have to, every bank does not have to do due diligence at the same level of detail that they currently do. And that makes the partnership very difficult because it just takes a lot of time. So we believe that there are certain other interventions that may be needed from the regulator side and also from the fintech industry to make integrations easier, faster, and that can really accelerate this in financial infratech sector, which is basically fintechs who support banks in becoming better. And we are very bullish on that. But there is this issue of partnership which needs to be resolved. And I am very hopeful it will get resolved because the business case for that is very strong.
And lastly, are we on the cusp of consolidation in the fintech sector?
So I think consolidation is a term that I think is used in those industries which are more mature. Like this fintech is a 25-year trend, and we are in the third or fourth year. It is a high growth thing. It will grow very, very significantly. I think what we will see here is that it is a rationalization phase, I would say, not consolidation, where certain business models which are not sustainable, will be churned and others will become bigger. But we believe new ideas are going to come, new things are going to come in next 3 years, and new types of fintech will come. So it is not that just a few will become bigger by absorbing others. I think the level of innovation that is ahead of us is significant, and it will be a different type of industry evolution than what we would traditionally call consolidation.
Saurabh, it was wonderful having you on the BS Banking Show. We look forward to having you once again. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, Raghu. It was a pleasure.
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram and LinkedIn.
I am the blue of the limitless sky. I am the inspiration that led success soar high. I will achieve, I will fly high. I am the I in SBI.
I'm backed by the nation's trusted bank, SBI, the banker to every Indian.